Good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Tuesday classroom session. My name is Noah. I'm one of the educators with Shortcuts, and today we're going to be looking at online client information cards and custom forms. So if you are a salon or a spa or a barbershop that needs to have some sort of custom forms or some sort of way for your staff to access customer history, customer notes, things like that, let's say on the phone or on a tablet, this is actually the classroom for you. Now, Shortcuts also allows you, in some instances, to create custom forms. So we have some salons that we work with that do color, and they need an allergy test or a patch test, and they have to have notes and the customer sign off on those. And we also have spas that we work with that do laser or sun tanning, and the customer has to sign off on forms with regards to any sensitivities, any allergies, things like that. So rather than have a bunch of paper forms, you can actually have an online form. And you can create what questions you need to see, what terms and conditions the customer needs to sign off, and even if the customer has to fill one out each time they visit, or if they only have to fill out once every few months or just one time. So that's what custom forms are. So let's actually talk a little bit about both. So as with other presentations, this webinar is going to be about 30 minutes, give or take. My microphone is on, we are recording. So if you have to leave early, that's okay. We will send you a copy of the recording later today. Also, if you have any questions after the fact, you can always reach out to us. I will put in our contact information, as well as you can reach out to us on social media. So Shortcuts is on Instagram, we are on Facebook and Twitter. So if you think of any questions with regards to customer cards, custom forms, what it can do, how does it work, do let us know. So the focus of today. So specifically, this is something with regards to Shortcuts online services. So we're going to look at how to give access to online client information cards. So you do not have to give everybody on staff permission. So for example, if you just have a front desk person, and this is the only one that should be bringing up forms, bringing up client cards online, you can limit who has access to that. And then if you decide your salon or your spa, or in some cases, Shortcuts works with several tattoo parlors, and they have to have online forms just to keep records of the customers, how to set that up and how to use them. So let's start with access, creating access. So for today, this is not necessarily going to be configured in the Shortcuts point of sale system. This is going to be configured in the console. Now the console is usually where you go to set up your online booking settings or set up your self check-in settings. So when you go to the console, you're going to go to site settings. And in the middle of the screen, there is a checkbox that says if somebody has permission to access client information cards, when can they access it? So can they access it only during business hours? Can they access it whenever they want? Or can they access it 30 minutes or an hour before or after the business closes? So that's entirely up to you. Now, just a cautionary tale. If you are concerned about customer privacy or customer details, and you give your staff access at all times, remember they can look up customers during their off days. So just in case you're concerned about employee attrition, do keep that in mind. Now, that's when you tell Shortcuts when should somebody have access to client information cards. But to actually give permission, you're going to go to the Manage Users button on the right side. Now, once you're in Manage Users, this is where you start assigning permissions. So I'm actually going to get out of the presentation for a second and actually show you in real time. So I'm going to go to my web browser and I'm going to go to the console. So remember, Site Settings is the button you go to. And once you're in Site Settings, you're going to scroll down a little bit. And it's just after the business hours. There's a checkbox that says Client Information Card Access. So you have three options. The staff can only access client information cards during normal business hours, or access at all times, or in this case, I have it set to 30 minutes before and after business hours. So including the regular business day plus 30 minutes. So this is where I say, when can they access it? To actually give somebody permission, this is where I go to Manage Users. And once I'm in Manage Users, I see the names of my staff. Now, normally, I would give my staff permission to look at their schedule, look at their appointments, maybe even move some appointments around. But if I decided that they should also have client information access, I can go to Colleen, for example, and I'll go to Edit her permissions. And if I scroll down on my site information, this is where I have the option to give her client information card access. Now, the other permissions, just in case you were wondering, appointment operator would give Colleen the ability to look at her appointments, and that's about it. If I give her employee and I'm sorry, I have it backwards actually. If I give her employee permission, that allows her to look at her schedule. If I give her employee plus appointment operator permission, appointment operator allows her to make appointments for herself, not anybody else. And of course, client information card access gives her the ability to look up client cards. Now, site managers, those are usually reserved for literal managers because this will allow them to have access not just to everybody else's appointments and to make them and move them around, but also to respond to customer surveys. If you have Spotlight, if you're sending out surveys for your clients. So once I give her CIC access, on the right side, if I press save, then Colleen now has updated permissions. So it's as simple as that. If the staff should have access to that, once they have CIC access, if they use a tablet or they use their phone to access the console, they will now have permission to go into the client information button, search for a customer, update their notes, update their histories. And the information that they update here, plus they can give, of course, the customer the ability to update their own contact information. So if this was at the salon and you brought it up on a tablet and you go to client information and the customer says, I have a new phone number, I have a new email, you can absolutely bring up their card and let them fill in the blanks. So let's go back to the presentation. So once the staff has permission to access a client card, once the staff has permission to bring it up on their phone or on a tablet, now you decide, does your business require a custom form? So to do that, by default, nobody has permission to do that. Usually only the owner or the manager would. When you go to client information, there's a button that says forms. And once you're on the forms page, by default, there are no forms and shortcuts. You have to create them. So you simply press the button that says create a form. Once you press create a form, you're allowed to do multiple things with it. So of course, you can give it a title. So if your business requires multiple types of forms, you can label it. And then you can tell shortcuts. What sorts of fields should this have? Now there's actually two distinct groups of fields. One is information that is automatically populated from shortcuts. So if you have the customer's name, first and last, phone number, email, you can actually have shortcuts put those fields in the form, and they will be filled in automatically for that particular client. And if something is missing, let's say an email is missing, the customer can then fill it in. So there's pre-populated fields you can enter. And then there's a second group of buttons that allow you to tell shortcuts, or in this case, the online form, what questions does the customer need to answer. So these include things like multiple choice, or multiple selection, or a pull-down menu, and you actually get to choose the questions and the responses that the customer must provide. Not only that, you get to tell shortcuts what is the order of the questions that you want. And is this a mandatory question? Does the customer actually have to fill in before they're allowed to save this? And it's very easy to change the order of the questions. There's a little arrow that points up and down to trade places with any other row. And of course, there's a little X button that allows you to delete questions if you don't need them. So let's actually take a look at this. So again, I'm going to get out of the presentation for just a moment and jump into my forms. So I went to the client information button. That was the last place I was at. On the right side, I'm going to forms. Now I've already created a number of test forms. So I'm going to go to the allergies form, for example. Normally you would press create form and fill in the blanks, but I'll go to one that I've already started and I'm going to edit it. So at the very top, I gave it a name. I told Shortcuts, is this form active or not? So I will say it is active. And I require the customer to fill this out every visit, not just once every 12 months or once only. Also, does a staff member have to review this and put in their security pin, their shortcut security pin, to confirm the customer filled it in correctly? In this case, I can say no because the questions are pretty simple. So on the left side, Shortcuts will actually give you a blank screen that you build your template from. And on the right side, remember I said there are two groups of fields you can fill in. The first one, Shortcuts client fields. So anything that's on this list is automatically going to be populated if you have this customer's information already. So the three that I chose, first name, last name, cell phone. If I decide that my field, my custom form should have email as well, all I have to do is press this little green plus button. And now email is on the list. But if you notice, email is at the bottom of my form. I'd prefer to move it up. So on the right side, there's a little arrow that tells me move this up. So I will move it up. I will move it up again. And now it is after cell phone. So in the order of importance to me, first name, last name, cell phone, and email. So those are the client fields. The second group of form fields, the extra form fields, is where you actually customize what you need to see on your form. So if I have a header and I want to give this form an actual header that says what is the name of it, in this case allergies form, I can do that. If I want Shortcuts to insert the date that the customer filled it in, I can put that in. If I have a single line or a multi-line text where I have to describe the services or the process, whatever it is, I can enter those fields. I can even insert a logo. So let me press logo and upload a logo. So I chose the Shortcuts logo and I'm going to center it. And I'm telling the banner to make it 600 pixels wide so that it fits on my screen. So just like that, I've even branded my own custom form. So you can do the same thing with yours. So I'm going to press save on the right so I can save my changes as they happen. And now I can return back to the form. So of course, don't forget to save your progress as you're building your form. So there's my logo, there's my information, and I can continue asking questions. I can go to extra form fields. If I have a single choice question like yes or no, if I need to create a drop-down list of multiple questions, all I have to do is press that button. In this case, one of the ones that I added was the sort of terms and conditions. So in this case, are you allergic to the following items? That's my questions. And this is a multiple choice. So I told Shortcuts I want to have 3 columns or 4 columns. In this case, maybe I want to show 2 columns. And what are the questions? So all I have to do is press the plus button. So my options are you allergic to tea tree oil, latex? Are you allergic to eggs or poultry, things like that, nuts, conditioner? So these are things that my staff has to be aware of. And then Shortcuts will require the customer to fill in these questions. So right now, this is mandatory. Is the customer allergic to any of these things? And they have to click a checkbox. But if you notice, there is not a checkbox that says none of the above or no allergies. So I'm going to add that. So on this form, I will say no allergies and press the plus button. So now, because this is a mandatory field, if the customer is not allergic to the above, they can just press no allergies. Now, if they have an allergy that is not on this list, and I decide I need to add another question, so I will have the ability to either put a single choice question or a multi-line text. So I'll say single line text. And the label, what is it going to be? Other allergies not listed. So I can have a single line that explains what is the other allergy not listed. Please list. And now shortcuts. I will put the label above the field. So shortcuts will add a sentence where the customer can just type this in. And I will say this is not mandatory because, or actually, yeah, I will say it is not mandatory because, of course, if a customer hits no allergies, they can just skip the next question. So at the very bottom, the terms and conditions for your business, and you decide, does the customer use their finger to sign the screen, or do they just press a checkbox that says, I understand and agree to the terms? So again, once I press save, then the staff that has permission to access the client card now can access one of your custom forms. So again, if your business requires you to have multiple forms, they're very easy to set up, very easy to access. So let's actually talk about accessing it. So when you go to your client information, Shortcuts is going to ask you for your security PIN. Once you're there, you're going to search for a customer, you're going to choose client entry, and then you're going to select the forms button. So Shortcuts will show you if you have multiple forms, which one would you like to fill in, and let you start updating the information. So of course, depending on your security setting, if you require your staff to sign off on the form after the client completes it, then they'll enter their PIN again, or the customer can just save their changes if it's a simple form. So the customer will sign off, and the staff can either press adjust and let the customer correct the information, or accept, and it will be saved into the customer's history, into the customer's notes. Now, if a customer returns for a service that requires a form, and if you just want to make sure that the clients have completed the appropriate forms, again, when you search for a customer, you can press the client history button, and Shortcuts will give you a list of any forms they've completed. Also, you can add messages in the forms, add notes, and other details. So that sums up client information card, how to give your staff access to that, and if you decide that your business needs custom forms, how to create them and how to access them. It's very easy to use. It's a feature that I'm sure may apply to a number of the businesses that are tuning in. So usually we open up the floor for questions, but I don't think we have any questions this round, so I'm going to wrap it up a little bit early. If you're interested in custom forms, this usually requires you to be on a certain tier package in Shortcuts. So if you haven't updated your contract in a long time, there's a number of features you could be taking advantage of, as well as our new global payments. If you need an integrated payment processor with very competitive rates, do let us know. Reach out to our customer care team. And you can also reach us on social media. If you go to Facebook, Shortcuts North America, you can also find us on Instagram and Twitter. And if you have a specific question, let's say you already have custom forms, you forgot a certain step, or you just need help with it, you can always reach out to us at education@shortcuts.net. So chances are myself or one of my colleagues will get back to you. So that actually covers everything we were going to review this morning. Thank you all for attending, and I look forward to seeing you on the next classroom session. Have a great day.